Hello and welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. Civic Center TV is on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99 and online on civiccentertv.com. In addition, we're also on TV in Birmingham, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, and the village of Franklin on Birmingham Area Municipal Access. That also on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. Also, we're on 88.1 WBFH, The Biff. The Biff is the service of the Bloomfield Hills School District under the supervision of station manager Ron Whittables, and we thank them for joining us each and every day. In addition, today, as always, we have a Facebook partner helping us by broadcasting live on their Facebook page via Facebook Live today. That Facebook partner is the Keego Harbor Police Department. We'll speak with Chief John Fitzgerald in just a little bit with some updates on what's going on in Keego Harbor, how that city is responding continuously to the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as it's a big boating city, it's a big lake city, and there's some courtesies that people can take on the water. We'll discuss that with him as well on the show. In addition, later on in the first hour, we'll talk with Stacy Amey, the Etiquette Guru, will teach us about how proper etiquette is changing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. That and more coming up today on the Oakland County Megacast as we continue to bring you the latest news and information from around the Oakland County area in regards to COVID-19, the continuing pandemic, and other top news stories. So to find those news stories, go to our website, civiccentertv.com, and we update these stories each and every day during our 5-day-a-week Megacast run from 10 a.m. to 12 noon each and every day. And you can find those stories on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, or if you're watching us on TV right now, we're on our homepage. Just click on the coronavirus link, and it'll take you to our news page. It has the top news stories of the day, as well as links to reputable resources nationally, statewide, and countywide, and information from your local municipalities, wherever your hometown may be. In our listening area, we have links to those municipalities on our website. So if you need to get in contact with your local clerk's office and register to vote, figure out where you can drop off your absentee ballot or get questions answered about your voting precinct for the upcoming election. Let's say you're in the city of Sylvan Lake. You can click on the Sylvan Lake page and it'll take you right to their website. Mainly on this page, we have our top stories of the day, and today our top story, lab delays are occurring as more people are getting tested for COVID-19. As the coronavirus stretches toward its 6th month in Michigan, testing for the deadly virus has moved far beyond the sickest or the most at risk, becoming more normal part of public life. But all that testing is slowing test results and putting a kink in the supply chains. That, in turn, is limiting the ability of local health officials to quickly identify infections and curtail their spread, according to medical officials at the laboratories, hospitals, and nursing homes interviewed by Bridge, Michigan magazine. It is impossible to quantify testing turnaround times in Michigan or how much they have slowed in recent weeks. Michigan Department of Health and Human Services spokeswoman Lynn Sufton confirmed that the state does not track turnaround times, but some labs are able to give next-day results. Others are taking, quote, up to a week, she said. So this is something that's been kind of an interesting thing to talk about amongst the public, and I know we've talked about this here a little bit on the show about there's so much more available testing, so if you feel the need to be tested, you can be tested, but people are going out and getting tested just out of an abundance of caution or out of curiosity in many cases, and that's leading to slowdowns in getting these test results, which for some people can be very critical as they're feeling ill and they need to know, with time being of the essence in treating COVID-19, if this is COVID or some other illness, so that them and their primary care physician can properly treat this. We'll talk more about this later on in the show. We have Dr. Jamie Taweel on today who can give us a little more insight on who really should be getting tested, who can get tested, and who should probably stay on the sidelines, as well as other issues. But this is a little bit of a wrinkle that hasn't been out there so far during the course of the pandemic, as early on, Ronnie, we saw certain requirements were in place in order to get tested, and now it's more free and open, and that's causing some delays.
I think there is confusion from a lot of our elected leaders as well. We have these PSAs, public service announcements, out there talking about testing. So we're assuming that one and everyone can and should get tested. But also remember that test is only that snapshot in time. It's not for what could have happened before, or even if maybe you are positive but you don't know yet and the test isn't picking it up. So I think there is confusion out there because in the beginning we know how desperate they were for tests, but now that we have more testing out there, you're seeing people like maybe you're required to get a test to go back to work. We saw yesterday where the judge is requiring all the summer school students in Detroit get tested as well. So at some point in time, there is going to be a lack of the supplies of the test, and not just the tests themselves, but the items needed to make these tests. I know at one time cotton swabs were really hard to get. So we have to find a balance in this and how they're going to address it and what's going to be I think we need a national or at least a state protocol to give us the answers on this.
I would agree on that. And then there's different types of testing, too. And this is also something we can discuss more at length with Dr. Taweel later on. There's different types of testing, too. There's different forms of the viral testing that you can get, that some are of varying accuracy and of varying time necessarily to get back the results, that maybe the more expedient tests and the more accurate tests should go to people that are getting those tests in an abundance of caution. They've been somewhere where they may have been exposed, or they're showing symptoms and they need to know quickly, with time, of course, being of the essence in treating COVID, if it is a positive test, whereas others can maybe get a test that comes back with slower results, or maybe is slightly less accurate than the more expedient and the more stringent testing that's being done, that maybe can slow this down a little bit. But those protocols may need to be necessary. And some people who are asymptomatic and just curious, maybe the antibody test, which isn't as accurate as we've been told, but can still give some sort of a yes or a no to you, maybe that's a better avenue to take, so that you're not taking up the tests of positive, negative for the viral infection and possibly slowing the labs down and getting that critical test out there. So we'll talk more about that later on in the show. We have a medical expert on with us today that can give us a different perspective on that and a little more detail than Ronnie and I necessarily will be able to give you in good information. Other top stories at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. The Michigan House backs GOP's bills to reopen schools. The Michigan House of Representatives narrowly approved Republican lawmakers' plans for reopening schools during the COVID-19 pandemic, including a policy that would ensure school districts offer in-person instruction for younger students. The bill would establish so-called electronic learning days that would be exempt from funding requirements that schools have 75% attendance. They would also set up quote-unquote extended continuity of learning plans for school districts. Under the bills, districts' plans would have to ensure that students are provided with, quote, equitable access to technology, and close quote, and offer in-person instruction to students enrolled in kindergarten through 5th grade. The wide-ranging four-bill package, which clashes with elements of the Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer's reopening plan, drew opposition from Democratic lawmakers who argued that the bills benefited cyber schools by loosening restrictions on online offerings and left teachers out of the discussion. The four bills now have to go through the Michigan Senate. So a continued fight. We've seen this more on a national level, where there's been some opposition from one side of the aisle to the other side of the aisle in terms of when schools should reopen, with the Republican side of the aisle on the federal level saying schools should reopen in the fall. We believe that schools should reopen in the fall for in-person learning, and the Democratic side being a lot more cautious and saying, I don't know about that. It should be on a state-to-state basis. It should be based on the science. Maybe it's in-person and virtual hybrid, but let's not all jump to these conclusions that we're going back in person. And now we're kind of seeing that a little more on a statewide level, albeit with a little bit more caution put into play by the Republican lawmakers in the House, who are saying, yes, let's plan for in-person, let's be optimistic, but have the other plans in place so that if we're at a point where we need to be hybrid, or we need to be some days in, some days out, or all out, that we're able to do that.
I couldn't imagine being an educator right now and the things that they have to try to juggle. Every single day you're getting a different message on this, and the clock is ticking. There is not a lot of time between now and kids going back to school, I mean, even the colleges start in a couple weeks. Some of the colleges, because they're going back early, so they can get out earlier. But I think around Thanksgiving. So at some point in time, we need our elected leaders to give clear leadership on this issue so that your local school districts, your parents, your teachers, and the kids can, in their mind, get a plan together so that they can make these decisions that they need to make.
Education is such a critical issue within this COVID-19 issue right now, and there's so many wrinkles that are already in place, and it's clashing at the government level about what should schooling look like in the fall with COVID-19 at mind. Is certainly not helping ease the stress or ease the planning or smooth the planning, maybe is better wording, for the fall, as teachers are preparing their lesson plans, as school districts are finalizing their plans, as families are readying themselves to either send their kids back to school as they're going back to work, or have to navigate being possibly in the home and telecommuting, or coming into work some days and not other days, or arranging for a babysitter or other forms of child care, which is already tough to come by as it is, and that industry is already struggling. So these little wrinkles are complicating this issue even more than it already was complicated. And hopefully, as you said, the clock is ticking. We need some solutions that are in place, agreeable for at the very least, the teachers and the students and the administrators who will be operating these plans going forward.
I will say, times like this, Tyler, I'm glad I'm just a pet parent. I don't have to make these decisions. I'm just a pet parent.
Yeah, the only thing I'm teaching is teaching my cats not to scratch at my shower curtain. So I'm very glad about that, considering that I do have educators in my close family that are in a lot tougher spot as they're preparing to go back to school in the fall. Also, some bad news for some football fans coming up next, especially if you're like me and you bleed green and white. Michigan State football workouts have been stopped due to a positive COVID-19 test. Michigan State football has paused workouts because of a positive COVID test. The athletic department began weekly testing on June 15th. After student-athlete testing was completed Wednesday afternoon, the department became aware of a staff member who produced a positive test during the week testing. 402 student-athletes and 104 staffers have been tested for the virus. Of those, 7 players have tested positive. Players and staffers who tested positive must remain in isolation and undergo daily checks with the athletic training staff. Once an athlete tests positive, they need consecutive negative results in order to return. Because the 20-hour practice week was due to begin, players and staff members would be in larger groups than during voluntary workouts, and athletic director Bill Beekman decided to halt activities in an abundance of caution. And we've seen this with other athletics teams in the local area, particularly at the high school level. The most recent story that mirrors this is Clarkston High School and their football team, which is another perennial contender in high school football, in this case, as opposed to Michigan State on the college level, that had to stop their workouts and voluntarily said, we're shutting down temporarily while we get this under control after a positive test. This is a big scenario in sports right now in particular, as NBA basketball began yesterday. They began what I like to refer to as the Bubble Bowl, as they're down in Orlando playing for the championship. Major League Baseball's already began this week. The Tigers kick off their shortened season tomorrow. And these are concerns that are in place already for the MHSAA, for the NCAA, and I'm sure for the professional leagues as well. What do you do when there is a positive test and you're already in the games? Because at that point, you're playing with several players on your team, several players on another team who are then playing another team and another team and another team, and especially on the professional level and the college level where there's so much travel, even regionally, like the Big Ten's only playing in the Big Ten this year. That creates a dilemma where there could be a snowball effect that could affect several, if not every team in your league. So football fans, be cautious. Sports fans continue to be cautious, as these programs are too, adjusting to COVID-19 and determining what they can do to continue play safely after a positive test.
I'd be interested to know how parents are feeling right now. do you go ahead and you put your kids in sports? This is going to be an issue. It's going to continue to be an issue. And if you play a team, they have someone who tests positive, now that entire team is exposed. Are you just going to cancel that game, and then who wins and who doesn't, and for how long and how many games? And it's a snowball effect. I think it's totally different when we're talking about professional. Those are adults, and they have unions to protect them. But when you're looking at college and you're looking at high school and even junior high, how is this going to work? I just don't see how they're going to do football. If you were doing cross country track, maybe, but football, a contact sport, I don't see how it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough for these leagues to complete their seasons or even start their seasons and play ball. As the fall approaches, hopefully there'll be some more solutions in place that will allow that to happen, as people are clamoring for sports to be back in as regular of a capacity as is possible, as other recreational activities are continuing to be modified or shut down. That includes some large outdoor gatherings, typically large outdoor gatherings. Of course, the Orchard Lake Fine Arts Show in the local area that was scheduled to happen this weekend has been canceled due to COVID-19, and now popular festival Arts, Beats, and Eats is canceled for 2020 due to concerns surrounding the coronavirus pandemic, but organizers are planning a small-scale live entertainment and alternative virtual and drive-in event instead. The events will be fundraisers to support local musicians who have been hit especially hard by the pandemic. The goal is to raise $500,000. In addition to music, Art by Appointment will let patrons visit a limited number of artists' booths on site. For those who go to the festival for the food, locally owned food trucks will visit neighborhoods in the local area. All events come with restrictions. You can get more information, including ticket information, at artsbeatseats.com, and we have a link to that on this article on our website. So more festivals or more outdoor gatherings, more traditions like the Dream Cruise, the Orchard Lake Fine Arts Show, Arts, Beats, and Eats, and so on and so forth, continuing to be canceled or modified significantly in order to accommodate COVID-19 while still keeping some traditions alive, because you want to continue life as normal as possible as all these abnormalities are coming into play.
We kind of call this the COVID creativity.
Yeah.
And John Witz, who is the organizer for Arts, Beats, and Eats, has really come up with some creative solutions to try to have a version of the Arts, Beats, and Eats alive this year. So I really, anyone who enjoys that festival, which brings hundreds of thousands of people to the area, it is so popular. So if you do like it, they're really creative in how they've come up with ways that you could still enjoy the music as well as the food and some of the artists as well. And on top of that, take the time to, they're doing virtual, not just the local drive-in concerts, but they have virtual concerts as well. And those are going to be fundraisers. They're hoping to raise $500,000. So my nephew is an artist. He's a drummer in a band in Chicago, and they haven't been able to play. That's their livelihood. So these artists have been hit so hard. Kudos to John Witz and his team at Art Beats and Eats to come up with some creative solutions to this. It's not going to be what we're used to, but hopefully people will still take part and maybe even enjoy a different version and come out of this in a different way. Let's support these artists, though.
Absolutely. All those stories online on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, as well as links to important and factual information from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, and your local hometown, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. And speaking of local hometown, there's a number of different issues that come up depending on which municipality you are living in at any given time. Some people go to different places for recreation, for local eateries or bars, or for sightseeing, and other people go to places that are great boating communities, especially over the summer months, to enjoy the water and enjoy some fun with friends and family. But that can bring up some other additional issues, and there's some points of courtesy as well that we need to be better aware of. And joining us now is our first guest today. He's the chief of police in the city of Keego Harbor. We are joined once again by Chief John Fitzgerald on the Oakland County Megacast. Chief Fitz, thanks for being with us today.
Good morning, Tyler.
Appreciate
Good morning,
it.
Ronnie.
Good morning. How are you doing? How are your officers?
They're doing well. Thank you very much for asking. They're doing great.
That's good to hear. So we had an incident over last weekend on the water, and we see these kinds of things happen year to year in various places, not just in Keego Harbor, but all throughout Oakland County and the state of Michigan. Can you give us a little bit of detail about what went on the water in Keego and how that incident maybe was resolved in that case?
I'll try to keep the story short and not drone on too long about it. But our Marine Patrol officer was out on the lake on Saturday. He observed a personal watercraft floating over by Ward's Point, and he saw a couple of people in the water, and one looked like they were in distress. They were signaling for help. As he got closer, it was a male and a female in the water, and she was screaming for help. He pulled up and performed a water rescue, got her on the boat. The male got back to the personal watercraft and then maneuvered that over by the police boat, where it seemed like the male and female were having an argument, but he convinced her to get back on the personal watercraft. The officer said, "I'll follow you back to the sandbar area, just make sure you get back there safely." So as he was following, he noticed the male operator driving erratically on the boat, gave him cause to investigate further for possible operating while impaired. The male driving the personal watercraft was not very cooperative during the investigation. The officer was able to determine he had probable cause to arrest him for operating while impaired of a watercraft. He told him he was going to be under arrest. The male attempted to jump off the police boat to escape, and as the officer grabbed onto him, the male jumping off, the actions pulled both of them into the water. The male pushed the officer away, assaulting him to push him away, and he was fleeing from him. He eventually got on another pontoon boat. Our officer called for help, and we're very appreciative of Sylvan Lake Police Department, West Bloomfield Police Department, Orchard Lake Police Department, Oakland County Sheriff's Department, and the DNR Law Enforcement Division. They all responded to assist the officer who had been struggling with this subject. When the other officers got there, our officer realized that he was going to step back to de-escalate the situation because he knew that he was a trigger point for this guy, and he's going to let the other officers take over. So they finished the investigation there. After a little while, they were able to get him into an ambulance to take to the hospital to check for any injuries and complete the OWI investigation. They found enough probable cause to make the arrest for operating while impaired, and he was lodged in the Oakland County Jail until it was determined he was sober enough to be released. And right now, it's awaiting presentation to the prosecutor's office. We're waiting for the blood test results on his blood alcohol content before we present for warrant.
Chief Fitzgerald, these kinds of incidents are unfortunately common on the water in Oakland County and the state of Michigan, as people are going out to recreate on the water, on boats, all throughout the state of Michigan, especially in the summer months. And it's a team effort, as you said, like your partnership with Sylvan Lake and West Bloomfield, Orchard Lake, the DNR, and so on, to bring this incident to a resolution safely. It is a team effort, but it's also a team effort on the part of the community to be courteous on the water, both of the Marine Patrol officers and, of course, of other boaters and people that are also just trying to have a fun time during the week and on the weekend on the water. What more can the community do to be courteous on the water of other people and help the police officers that are out patrolling to do their job as effectively as possible?
Well, luckily, this isn't a common event. We don't often have the officers fighting with people on the lake. This is the first incident. No, I'm sorry, the second incident since I've been here 2.5 years. But what we need out of everybody on the lake, you're out there for a good time. But remember, when you're on the sandbar on Cass Lake or any of the other lakes that the boats congregate at, there's a lot of people in the water. There's boats close together. There's anchor lines. We don't want a tragedy. A propeller can easily do damage. Serious to fatal damage to anybody standing in the water if you're not careful. That's why there's rules around the lake of the no wake zones within 100 feet of a boat, an anchored boat, a swimmer, a dock. You have to be down to as low a power as you can to still maneuver your vessel as you're in the water. Drinking and boating, yes, alcohol is legal on the boats on Cass Lake. You can have alcohol on your boat, but you have to use common sense. If you're operating the boat, that's a powerful tool. It's a dangerous tool. And if you're under the influence, you will be charged just like drunk driving on the road if something happens, and you could face serious felony charges if someone's injured or killed. So if you're operating the boat, don't be drinking. Let your guests drink. You take the day off from drinking and be safe out there. just follow the common boating rules that are out there, and make sure there's personal flotation devices for everybody on your boat, another safety measure. And luckily, the woman in our story from this weekend was wearing a personal flotation device because she told the officer that she couldn't swim. So she was very in fear of her life, and luckily she had a vest on.
Chief, I live over there in Keego Harbor, and I've been out into that area. And the lake right there at Ward's Point, it drops off to where you're used to it being the sandbar and it's only waist high, but then all of a sudden it does drop off. Do you think some of these incidents are because people don't really understand the lake, or they're new people coming in?
I think that happens on every lake. I think that people get surprised as they're walking along lakes and you can't see the bottom, and there's a drop off, and it causes people to slip down the edge of that drop off, and they gasp and get a mouthful of water, and it leads to a tragedy. So when you're on the water, wading, swimming, or boating, you have to be careful and watch out for yourself.
Chief John Fitzgerald with us on the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft alongside Ronnie Dahl in our studios of our flagship station, Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. Chief Fitzgerald, we're in an interesting time now in the summer with the boating season and with the people that are commonly gathering in Keego Harbor, on Cass Lake, on the Sandbar, and on other lakes with similar places throughout the state of Michigan and definitely in the Oakland County area. That creates some murky ground there for social distancing measures. What are the rules in terms of social distancing and mask wearing in those kinds of, let's call, for lack of better terms, public gathering spaces during this time, and how are those being enforced and monitored by the Marine Patrol?
It's an interesting situation because you have people on boats, which even if they're right next to each other, they can still be 6 feet apart from the boat next to them. People on the boats could be members of the same household, which eliminates the mask requirements. They might not be, so maybe they should be wearing a mask. Once again, you have to be an adult and think of your own health and think of your children's health that are with you. If you're going to be close to the other people, put a mask on and help protect yourselves and your children. It's awfully hard for us to come out and go, well, who do we know that is or isn't in a household on these boats? Is this really a gathering of over 100 people? Because it's not an organized gathering. There's no lead organizer putting this together. It's just boats that have a right to come out on a waterway, and they tend to be close together because the sandbar is a limited area of space, and that's where they want to be to get out and swim wade. So it would make enforcement on our part extremely hard without stepping on people's rights also. So what I'm advising is, if you're near people that are not in your household, wear that mask or keep that distance and be careful out there. There's not much more at the moment that we can do about that part because it's not an official gathering. We also would like to ask people, have some respect for the other people, the other boats, and the homeowners along the shoreline. Give a little room so people can get their boats out from the shore. The people that are on the sandbar have room to maneuver their boats. If you pack all on top of each other, it's something that could lead to bad things by boats having to maneuver around other boats that are too close together.
So I will say I'm out on the lake every weekend, and I'm not wearing a mask because that would be quite the suntan that you get your sun marks. Wouldn't that be cute? But Chief, I have to ask you, living in Keego, it seems when I've been out to a lot of the restaurants and the bars or at the shops, I've seen most people with their mask on. With the new mandate in place, I know we've talked to you about this before, but with the new mandate in place, have there been any issues or any complaints coming into the police department?
We've been lucky in Keego with very few complaints. We'd hate to see something happen where, like it's happened in some other cities, where assaults have happened and tragedies have happened, where like in the Lansing area, where the one man went in without a mask and ended up stabbing a store clerk and then having to be shot by a police officer when he attacked the police officer with a knife. There's been other assaults that have happened. If there's somebody in the store that doesn't have a mask on, don't confront them. It's not your spot to. It's just going to raise tensions, possibly raise the possibility of an assault. Don't confront them. Maybe still tell a store clerk. I understand that some of the stores are a little hesitant to say something because they don't want have problems with their personnel either. You can call us if somebody refuses our big point of enforcing this is if we go to a store and the store has told them you can't be in here without a mask and they refuse to leave, we can write in for a trespassing, and there's no question about that ticket. That'd be a misdemeanor ticket for trespassing. So we will help, but luckily the community of Keego Harbor has been pretty cooperative, and people have been wearing their masks where they're supposed to and working well with each other.
Chief, we appreciate having you on. Anything else you'd like to touch on today? Any other important information our audience should know before we let you go?
Once again, we're coming up to the weekend, a summer weekend on the lake, and people like to be on the sandbar. Please respect everybody else out there. Keep your stereos turned down. Think about if you were in your backyard, your neighbor right behind you in a subdivision can't turn his stereo up and just blast you out with the music. It's the same rules out there on the lake. Don't turn your music up on your boat aimed right at the houses on the shore. They have a right to their privacy and not have to be assaulted with your loud music. Be careful around everybody else on the lake. Remember that there's people in the water, and also remember that COVID virus is out there. Be careful with your masks and your social distancing. And we want to see everybody stay healthy and be here at the end of the summer. And we're glad to have you out in Keego and enjoy the summer on the lakes.
Chief, we appreciate having you on today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You as well. Chief John Fitzgerald from the city of Keego Harbor. He is their chief of police. We're also today broadcasting live on the Keego Harbor Police Department's Facebook page via Facebook Live, and appreciate that. And it's such good insight there, Ronnie, about just general courtesies on the water. It's very similar to being in the public, but there's so many other variables with, of course, people's ability to swim or not to swim, spacing issues. Social distancing is also now another factor that's being added on. It's different from the typical summer on the lakes in the local area, and it's so important for us to work as a community, much like Chief Greg Flynn said earlier on in the week in regards to COVID-19 measures and misinformation. It's so important for us to work as a community to maintain social courtesies, be kind of other people, and be mindful of safety so that we can protect the waters on top of the protection that we're getting from our local marine patrols and other systems in place.
We are very lucky in Keego Harbor to have the Marine Patrol out there. They're out there every weekend, and they have been even during the times when Orchard Lake Sheriff's Department had cut them due to budget cuts. We in Keego have always been able to maintain that service, which is so important. Respect them. They're out there every weekend. They're just there not to hassle anyone on the water. They're very experienced, but it's to make sure that all of us are protected. And in this case, he was there and he was able to help rescue one of the boaters. And I believe she wasn't from the area. She may have been from Inkster, I believe. So you're so unfamiliar with the lake, and these things can happen like in a split second. So when the officer goes and they're there to help you, be mindful, be respectful, follow their orders. They're not out there to ticket you for not wearing a mask or getting too close to one another. Have fun, but just be safe at the end of the day as well.
Being kind, being courteous, being polite, so important in all walks of life right now, and especially on the water, as there's so many different safety variables that are at play as well. When we come back, we'll talk more about being polite, being courteous, having proper etiquette. We got the Etiquette Guru coming up after the break. You're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
As rivals, we don't always see eye to eye.
Like who scored the best recruits?
Who's gonna be who?
And whether we wear green
or blue.
But one thing we can all agree on to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Wear a mask.
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 The ball's in your court, Michigan.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe, alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of 89.3 Lakes FM and Civic Center TV. In addition, today, as always, we're on Birmingham Area Municipal Access and 88.1 WBFH, The Biff out of Bloomfield Hills High School. And, of course, today our Facebook partner, as always, we have a Facebook partner. Today that partner is the Keego Harbor Police Department. We appreciate them being on with us today. We thank Chief John Fitzgerald, Dennis Kearns, and their entire team over there on their social media side for bringing us on for the entirety of our show today from 10 a.m. to 12 noon via Facebook Live as we continue to tackle the nuances of regular life and how it's been changed by the COVID-19 pandemic for the course of the pandemic and even going into the future. And to talk to us about some of those changes in terms of interacting with other people and just social norms and how those might change going forward, we're joined now by the Etiquette Guru, Stacy Amey, on the Oakland County Megacast. Stacy, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Good morning.
We appreciate having you on. How are you? How have you been during the pandemic?
Doing well. Thank you very much.
So in normal times, what do you do as the Etiquette Guru? How are you helping people to learn proper etiquette, to be more kind and courteous in person?
By doing classes together, I do a lot with the Girl Scouts of Southeastern Michigan and private classes, any age, children 6 to 12, teen etiquette, dining etiquette, and really just hitting home the importance of being kind and compassionate to one another, and even more so during this pandemic event that we're experiencing.
Every business and every organization has been affected in some way by the coronavirus pandemic. How have you been affected by that? Have you had to switch to virtual? Have you discontinued your classes during this? Have they changed to in-person with social distancing? How has it impacted your business specifically?
It has impacted my business as far as the one-on-one or interacting live with people. So yes, I have changed to interactive virtual classes, and that seems to be working well. People still want these skills, but you have to adapt to the times. And I have teen etiquette and dining etiquette DVD courses. So it actually was a pretty seamless transition for me to be able to show the skills to people. They then practice and show them back to me. So I was impacted, but not greatly by this.
Well, that's at least good to hear that there was some impact, but not a major impact. We've seen so many major impacts in other sectors of business and in the local area. So any story we hear of someone that had to pivot but has not been hit all too badly by this virus, we are always happy to hear that. So Stacy Amey, the Etiquette Guru, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. One of the key transitions during the pandemic has been from typical person-to-person, in-person interaction to more of the virtual side. You have, of course, your virtual classes. Schools have transitioned to online. Heck, we're doing a TV show over Zoom today. You can't see us at this moment with the systems we have in place, but it's a similar kind of setup as you're seeing in businesses and in family life all throughout. How has etiquette been modified, or how is it different when you're interacting with someone in a virtual setting than when you're interacting with them in an in-person setting?
Well, that personal touch is gone, but just trying to take the time, whether you're in public and social distanced or virtually speaking with someone, I think going that extra mile with your words and your emotions and just telling people how you feel or the points you want to get across, because we've lost that sense of touch. So really going above and beyond that way. And also if you are in public wearing a mask, being mindful of your volume. A lot of people can't hear you. A lot of people are used to watching your mouth while you speak. So be mindful of that people can hear you. And really that leaves us virtually and in person with a mask with only your eyes. So your eyes are completely important to maintain good eye contact with people, and that can relay your emotions and everything comes through your eyes, and that's our way to connect with people right now. If you don't use good eye contact with people, even in the case of a handshake, if you shake someone's hand and you don't give them good eye contact, you will lose the connection with them. So eye contact is very powerful.
So, Stacy, you mentioned the handshake. Has the handshake gone away?
For right now, I think it has. I believe it will come back. I'm also a registered nurse, so I know that pandemics have happened in the past. They will likely happen in the future. I think that people enjoy that touch with other human beings. We're human, so touch is a basic need for us. So I think it's temporarily gone, but big thing, I don't want people to be afraid. If you have cuts on your hands, you should put Band-Aids on them, of course. But even today, I like I said, I'm a nurse. I touch people without gloves on. And wash your hands afterwards. Wash your hands after you've been in public. Wash your hands with warm soapy water before you eat. And your skin is your biggest organ, and it's there to protect you. So, as far as that hysteria, I think just know that your skin is in place to protect you. And if you keep it clean before you do anything to yourself, you want to wash your hands before you touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. So I just don't want people to be fearful.
So we become used to the handshake, and it's such a habit, but now they're telling us to do like the elbow bump. Is there an etiquette with the elbow bump, or how do we even monitor this, or do we just ask people?
That's the biggest thing that I have been doing. Ask people. You know your own comfort level. Ask people what is their comfort level. I personally have not done the elbow bump with anyone. I think that eyes meeting up and making good eye contact is more personal than an elbow bump, just as I was saying in the handshake. You can touch someone, bump their elbow or shake their hand, whatever, but if you're not looking in their eyes, you're not connecting with them. So eye contact is number one.
In terms of social distancing, Stacy Amey with us. She's the Etiquette Guru alongside Tyler. I'm Tyler Keefe with Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and Lakes FM for the Oakland County Megacast. In terms of etiquette in in-person gatherings, people still have small parties with family and friends and loved ones, some of which they cohabitate with and some of which they don't. And maybe they're going to require in that setting, okay, I know you're not sick. I'm not sick. Let's be free with wearing masks and be open. And if you want to wear one, wear one. If you don't want to, you don't want to. Other people are going to be a little more strict with that. How should we go about mask wearing in these settings so that we are being polite of those on site who are very stringent and wanting other people and wishing that other people will wear their masks, and those who are a little more lenient on their policies?
Communication is key. If you are uncomfortable and you're hosting a party, you need to be upfront and honest with people and just kindly tell them, please, will you put your mask on? If it's your home, it's your home, and you have that right. And I think as long as you're respectful and communicate your wishes to people, they will be, if they're your family or people that care about you, they will absolutely be respectful and receptive to what you're asking them. And if it's the flip side and it's you not wearing a mask, and I would just ask people, if I've had friends come over to my home and I ask them, would you like me to put a mask on? When I'm outside, I'm a lot more comfortable social distance and not wearing a mask. But in that inside setting, you just don't know this. It's a virus. And it's serious and it's unpredictable. So just protect yourself. And like everyone else has said before me this morning, wear your mask until we get this under control.
Businesses have had a big adjustment in the last several weeks with requirements from the state to wear masks in all indoor public settings and large outdoor gathering settings as well. And in that case, it's a little tougher to have the communication that you speak of in these smaller gatherings with people that you know and people that you love and people that you're friends with, as opposed to those who are strangers in this case or customers in this case. So for these businesses that are on the front lines and initially having to enforce these rules in order to stay in operation and make sure that people are wearing masks and maintaining social distance and that they're keeping their capacity levels, what can they do to continue to, of course, be safe and follow the laws, but also to maintain a quality relationship and a courteous and kind relationship with their clientele, knowing that they have to ultimately maintain those people's business to stay open as well.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I know we have a variety of opinions on this. So we have these laws and that in place at the moment. So people should try to be respectful of that. And again, being courteous to people beyond making them or putting a mask on them yourself, that's not going to happen. So all you can really do is ask people. And if they do not want to be compliant, then I guess you have to take the next steps to remove them from the situation. But always and forever, you can at least protect yourself, if not just a little bit, and wear your own mask. It's just like anyone else who's perhaps immunocompromised. They wear masks all the time to protect themselves, so at least you have that measure.
Etiquette is often a learning process, and it's not something that someone just picks up off of one lesson or of one moment in time where they learn something. It's something that's growing over time. What are some steps that people can take at home now as they're adjusting to etiquette in general and in relation to COVID-19, and as they're going forward, getting ready to return to work, return their kids to school, get ready to go back out in the public more often?
I think my biggest one, and this has been something for me since I began this, I was taught, I'm 53 years old, so way back when I was taught to catch my cough and sneeze. So, and then wash your hands, that's the catch. And I've been instructing people on this, this behavior of catching it in your elbow or your sleeve. Although it's better than not doing anything at all, certainly, through them telling us the virus perhaps lives 9 hours on material, that's a problem. If you are routinely coughing and sneezing into your arm, like so many children have been taught to do this, and what if you have an accident and you sneeze and something really bad happens? If you have caught it in your hand, you can discreetly go and wash your hands. But this practice of doing it into your elbow, I usually give the example of being at school and a teacher saying, okay, it's time for lunch, go wash your hands. And then you grab your friend's arm who has been coughing and sneezing into their arm all day. Now you have that all over your hand before you go and eat. So that's one thing I would like to see, and I was actually happy to see the big push for washing your hands come out of this. If people could remember or now relearn to cough and sneeze into their hands and wash their hands, or secondly, cough and sneeze into a tissue and then wash your hands, I think that would be really key in slowing the spread. And then, of course, wearing your masks appropriately, which I know that it's challenging, but it's all we have right now to kind of contain this.
So you mentioned that, and it's funny because I grew up with you. It was taught in your hand. So then I remember when someone's like, no, it's in your elbow. I was at a restaurant the other night and someone was coughing and then just continued their conversation, but they kept coughing. If you're in public and you encounter someone and they're a table or two away, should you say something? And if you do, how would you go about addressing them politely? Is there a protocol for that?
I personally, I don't think you can address people like that. You can't change the world. That would be a situation where you protect yourself. You're not going to be able to go up to each and every person that isn't doing the thing properly and address it that way. I mean, I think certainly if they were some of these people that are putting it in your direction, then it's more of an aggressive behavior. I think you have a right to say something, but if someone's just kind of minding their own business and that's what they're doing, there's not much I don't think you can say. If they really look and sound very, very ill, maybe I would be kind of passive aggressive and go to the restaurant owner and say, hey, I think that person is really ill over there, and leave it to them. Just as the police officer was saying before me, people they're pretty unpredictable in how they're going to react to things. So I don't know that I would put myself in that situation, even though it's even as simple as, hey, did you cover your mouth? You're not their mom. You know what I'm saying?
So with that being said, Tyler and I both suffer from allergies. And I feel like when you go out now and you have allergies, and if you sneeze or you cough, you want to announce to the world, no, it's just allergies. As a person and you notice someone is uncomfortable, should you share that with them where you're like, hey, just want to let you know I'm not sick, but these are allergies. I have springtime or summer allergies.
Yes, I am fully in support of that. Again, communication is key, and that makes everyone feel better. If you bring the information to them, it's just allergies. Anyone sitting around them and hearing the conversation, they're wondering, are you ill? So yes, I definitely think tell people, communicate to them, it's only allergies.
Stacy Amey with us. She is the Etiquette Guru with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Stacy, just another couple minutes with you. Where can people find more information or get in contact with you if they have questions about etiquette, especially etiquette as it revolves around this ongoing pandemic?
People can reach out to me on my website. It's theetiquetteguru.com. They can reach out to me there, or theetiquetteguru@yahoo.com. Send me a message, send me a question. I would love to hear it.
Stacy, anything else that you'd like to touch on today that's important for us to know before we let you go?
Just one main point I think I would like to make is, as we continue to learn and navigate through this terrible event, please just be kind and compassionate, patient with people. You don't know their situation. You don't know what they've been through. And I mean, the people that think this is a hoax, I can tell you as a registered nurse, it most definitely is not a hoax. It's a virus. So be respectful of all people and don't lose hope. I just don't ever lose hope. Things are going to get better.
Well, Stacy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. The Etiquette Guru, Stacy Amey, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Such good information from Stacy, Ronnie. I've learned a lot today. And we've had her on our programming here on Civic Center TV before. We had her on The Splash. We learned a lot then about etiquette, just in the normal sense, in regular times. That's what I like to refer to as the before times. And we learn even more today about how to tailor those different lessons to COVID-19, and it ultimately comes down to something similar to what we were hearing from John Fitzgerald, which is communication and courtesy of other people are so key right now.
You know, when I first saw her name on the list of guests, I was kind of like, but you could tell I had a lot of questions for her because we are experiencing things that we've never experienced in our life. And when we're out in social settings now, these are the questions you have to now have with people. Are you comfortable with me? Are you not comfortable with me doing this? Or my situation, like when you have the allergies, is you want to let people know around you, I just have allergies. And how do you do that? And how do you say that? And it's not awkward. And some people, it is so awkward that they choose not to say anything, and then that's when things can kind of snowball. So
in a situation like that where someone has the sniffles or they have allergies and they're communicating with that, there's still going to be situations where people are going to say, I'm going to still take my precautions. I'm sure you're fine, but I don't want to take the risk. I don't want to be rude. And you just got to kind of say, like, look, I don't want to be rude about this. I believe you. I don't think that you're miscommunicating or that you're under-exaggerating your situation, but I'm going to take a precaution, take a step back. And then you have to also, on the other side of that, be ready to hear that and be accepting of that as well and understanding, because we are in a time where a deadly virus that is airborne and transmitted through saliva cells and so on, that's still very much a problem in our society. And any way that people are going to go about taking their own precautions, we got to be courteous of that.
I was really happy to hear her address the issue of asking people when they come to your home, should you wear a mask, should you not wear a mask? We've had contractors in after our bathroom flooded. So we've had contractors, and when the contractor comes in and they're wearing a mask and they're keeping it on, even though they're inside my house, I feel like then I need to put a mask on. So I'll ask them, hey, do you want me to wear a mask? Are you more comfortable if I wear a mask? Do you need me to wear a mask? Because we have to remember we don't know their situations, but it feels so weird to put a mask on in your own home. But again, you have to have these conversations. So how do you say that, and how do you say it in a polite way to not offend someone, and is it offensive if you don't ask at all? So it's a new world we're navigating, Tyler.
It is, and it's so helpful to have a guru like Stacy Amey on with us, the Etiquette Guru. We appreciate having her on and all those lessons that we learned. If you are just tuning in and you missed that interview, that will be online later today, civiccentertv.com/megacast, as we continue to tackle a lot of different issues in relation to COVID-19. And one of the big issues right now, as people are preparing to go back to school and kids are even at home over the summer, is childcare. That includes our local summer camps. Many were canceled or on a reduced system, but some are still running. And we have Erica Jones out at a local summer camp right now to get some information on how one local summer camp is maintaining its operations and maintaining COVID-19 safety guidelines. Erica, how are you doing today?
Hey, Tyler, doing great. So as we saw this week, one of our major stories is how over half of childcare facilities in Michigan still remain closed. And this has been very hard for a lot of families because as we see more and more people back in the office at work, parents need places for their kids. So luckily, although it's not quite a childcare facility, WB Parks has a camp in the summer called Camp WB. And I'm here talking at Drake Park with the camp admin, Ashley, to tell us a little bit about their program.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Ashley. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Absolutely.
So we were talking and you told me that you guys have some new modifications to make the camp run smoothly. So can you tell us a little bit about how your start date was affected and the different structures of the camp this summer to adhere to state regulations?
Sure. So we typically run an 8-week camp program. So we had to adjust our time frame based on when we received the guidelines from the state. So we now are running a 6-week program. Camp usually is from 9 to 4. And then we also have like morning and afternoon latchkey. But now we had to adjust our hours quite a bit. And so we're doing a 10 to 3 day. We reduced our numbers by almost half, just to adhere to all the guidelines to make sure that we can safely run camp within pods. So we're working with this pod model, and we do a max of 10 kids per pod with 2 staff. And right now we're maxing out at 30 kids for our camp program.
So every morning when the kids show up, they're separated into 3 groups of 10. Mm-hmm. And within that group, you were saying the kids do not have to wear masks when they're specifically with those 10 people?
Correct. So the guidelines state that as long as they're within their cohort, they're considered like their family pod. So basically, they don't have to wear a mask within their pod, but they have to wear a mask if they are coming in within 6 feet of any other groups, the public, anyone else. Whenever we're going inside the building to use the facilities, everyone has to wear a mask. So, but within their group themselves, they do not have to wear a mask.
Yeah. And I know we were talking earlier, you were telling me how in past years you've gone on field trips, swimming, different places throughout the week. But unfortunately, this summer with the pandemic going on, you're not able to have bus transportation. So what new methods have been put in place to be a little more creative, considering you do have to stay at Drake Park every day?
Right. So we've tried to stay true to some of our traditional things as far as having Wacky Water Day on Fridays. Kids really enjoy that. We still have the ice cream truck come on Monday, so the kids get to enjoy some ice cream. We have a great naturalist team, and one of the naturalists comes and does nature education. Typically that would be done at Marshbank Park, but now she comes here and they're able to basically do, for the most part, the same thing that they would do at Marshbank Park in that regard is nature education. And then we also have brought some vendors on site to take place of the field trips where they are able to do like STEM program, like a science show. We had like a fire and ice show. We had an animal show yesterday. So we've just been trying to kind of fill in some of the gaps where we're not able to go off site like we typically are.
That's great. And so you said that it's normally an 8-week summer program, but this summer you were able to do 6 weeks. So do kids typically sign up for 1 week at a time, or can you sign up for the entire summer? How does that work?
Yeah, so we're super flexible. You can sign up for 1 week to all 8 weeks, in this case, all 6 weeks. So you have the flexibility to do 1 week or as many weeks as basically it fits your schedule.
Yeah. And are kids still able to sign up for upcoming weeks, or are most of your slots filled as numbers have decreased?
Yeah, we have probably a few more spots in each of the upcoming weeks. So definitely, if you're interested, I would definitely recommend that you call us now to make sure you get your spot. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, we have majority of the summer camps kind of full, but we have, I think, 4 more weeks left. So definitely, if you're interested, call our front desk and sign up now.
And what's the age range of the kids?
So we do 6 to 11-year-olds.
All right, and 6 to 11, are those the only qualifications? Other than that, do you need to be a West Bloomfield resident or anything else?
No, you don't.
All right, that's great. Is there anything else you want us to know about the camp or the rest of the plans for the summer?
I mean, for the most part, it's a great program. We've been running this camp program for the past 6 years, so we continue to progress and improve. We always have great feedback from the parents and the kids. They truly enjoy themselves. We have a great staff that just are truly like invested in the kids and making sure that they're going to have a wonderful camp experience.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. We really appreciate you chatting with us and sharing about Camp WV.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Tyler. Well, there you go. As you can see, this is a great place for parents to send their kids while they're still not able to go to other child care facilities. And this might even be more fun and interactive than your typical child care facility. So it's definitely something great to get involved in a very social, fun environment while a lot of people are still stuck at home.
Erica, thank you very much for that report. We appreciate it. Erica Jones out at Drake Sports Park for West Bloomfield Parks' summer camp programs and other summer camp programs going on as well. We've seen other child care programs and summer camp programs that we've spoken to in previous weeks, but as they were just getting started or they were in very small groups, and seeing that there's one going on with an interesting concept to maintain social distancing and other COVID-19 measures. Definitely a good sign as we continue forward and child care continues to be a major issue. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll reset at the top of the hour with your top headlines, and then we'll continue on with more guests in the second hour of the program. You are watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast. We will return after this short break. Ronnie and I will be back.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs. Even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary, we've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart, keep wearing a mask in public, and if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, today we're on Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Our radio stations, as always, 89.3 WBLD, Orchard Lake, West Bloomfield, Keego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and 88.1 WBFH, Bloomfield Hills. That is 88.1 WBFH, The Biff, hit music, hot topics, sports talk, and other great community radio station in our local area, a service of the Bloomfield Hills School District with operations out of Bloomfield Hills High School under the supervision of station manager Ron Whittables. And we thank Uncle Ron and the entire team out at the Biff for being with us each and every day as we continue to bring you the top headlines and stories about COVID-19 and other top information that you need to know in the Oakland County area. That on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, where today our top story, lab delays are in place as more people get tested for COVID-19. We're seeing that in month 6, testing for the deadly virus has moved far beyond just for being for the sickest or the most at risk, but it's becoming more of a normal part of public life. But all that testing is slowing down testing results and putting a kink in supply chains. That in turn is limiting the ability of local health officials to quickly identify infections and curtail their spread, according to medical officials at laboratories, hospitals, and nursing homes interviewed by Bridge, Michigan magazine. It is impossible to quantify turnaround times in Michigan or how much they have slowed in recent weeks. Michigan Department of Health and Human Services spokeswoman Lynn Sufton confirmed that the state does not track turnaround times for these tests. Some labs are able to give next day results. Other results are taking quote unquote up to a week, as Lynn Sufton had said. So we're going to have Dr. Jamie Taweel on in a little bit. We'll talk about this in more detail. But COVID-19 testing is so critical right now. It's been critical throughout the entire process of this pandemic as we were initially trying to track community spread, and then now it's so important as people are going back to work. You want to make sure that people are consistently getting tested who need to be tested, and those that are getting tested in an abundance of caution can do so in a timely manner, because it doesn't affect just them. It affects their entire family, those that they live with, the people that they work with, and the other branches of those people that you're interacting with, and their branches as well. So COVID-19 testing being timely is so critical, and these delays maybe could cause a little bit of an issue going forward.
I think one of the confusing things is there's so much information out there kind of pushing for people to get tested, so you don't know, should you get tested, when you should get tested, do you need to get tested, or are you getting tested just for your peace of mind? But we also forget that the test is a snapshot in that one moment of time. It's not necessarily going to give you your results for the next day. So maybe you're in that incubation period where it's not going to come up positive, but you actually have it. So I'll be interested to see what Dr. Taweel has to say about this.
Other important stories at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. The Michigan House of Representatives has backed the Grand Old Party's bills to reopen schools. The Michigan House narrowly approved the Republican lawmakers' plans for reopening schools during the pandemic, including a policy that would ensure districts offer in-person instruction for younger students. The bill would also establish so-called electronic learning days that would be exempt from funding requirements that schools have 75% attendance. They would also set up quote-unquote extended continuity of learning plans for school districts. Under the bills, districts' plans would have to ensure that students are provided with equitable access to technology and at least offer in-person instructions to students enrolled in kindergarten through 5th grade. The wide-ranging 4-bill package, which clashes with elements of Governor Gretchen Whitmer's reopening plan, drew opposition from the Democratic lawmakers who argued the bills benefited cyber schools by loosening restrictions on online offerings and left teachers out of the discussion. The 4 bills now have to go through the Michigan Senate. That's the next step in the process. And one thing that I'm looking at in here is equitable access to technology, Ronnie, because that's already a huge issue, regardless of if they're back in school all the time, back in school in a hybrid setting, or all virtual. The technology gap was already a problem as we transitioned quickly to virtual learning at the beginning of the pandemic, and it still is an issue now as schools, despite getting federal CARES Act dollars from the state coming in this year's budget, despite planning all summer long for the fall and trying to get as much of that technology ready to go and ready to distribute to those who need it, there's still a shortage there, and equitable access to technology, that direct quote in the bill, is something that's still very much in question.
It's not even so much providing the kids with computers, but also what good is a computer if you don't have the internet access? And when you don't have internet access, one of the first places you would go to was the library. Well, those were shut down as well. And now, while some are opening, you're still only allowed 30-minute windows. So if anything good comes out of this pandemic, let's hope that it addresses this issue so that we can provide an equal basis for all kids to have this platform to learn from.
And we've seen programs in the past from individual organizations and corporations like Comcast's Internet Essentials program that provides affordable internet access and technology access to families in lower income situations or struggling families. But this is something critical for learning, because if you're learning virtual, even in a small capacity, and these students don't have access to technology, or even equally as important in that equation, technology includes not just the devices but also access to the internet, then you're putting those specific students at a disadvantage, which further exacerbates already established issues in our society in regards to education that we could go on about for a very long time, but we only have a 2-hour program today, and we got other news to cover. So, lastly, our other top story on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. A popular festival is canceled due to COVID-19 concerns. Arts, Beats, and Eats is canceled for 2020 as the coronavirus pandemic continues, but organizers are planning small-scale live entertainment and alternative virtual drive-in events instead. The events will be fundraisers to support local musicians who have been hit especially hard by the pandemic. The goal is to raise $500,000. All events come with restrictions. You can get more information, including ticket information, at artsbeatseats.com. And you can find a link to that on our website for more information, as well as a link to that full article to get all the details you need to know. civiccentertv.com/coronavirus as we continue to learn more and more about different industries and different programs being impacted by the coronavirus. Financially, people are being impacted all across the board, whether it be paycheck restrictions, unemployment benefits coming to an end from the federal additional bonus of $600 per week, and that brings up some issues with housing and people's mortgages and so on. So talk about more of these financial issues, especially in regards to people's mortgages. We're pleased to be joined now by the manager of David Blatt Reverse Mortgages and K Financial Group, David Blatt, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Mr. Blatt, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure. It's Ronnie and Tyler. Look forward to it.
Appreciate having you on. How have you been? How is your business doing as this pandemic continues onward?
Fortunately, our family, knock on wood, is good. I actually have 2 nurses, one a nurse practitioner and a nurse, and they were both safe but busy. So as far as the business, it's been busy. If you follow the financial market, the interest rates are probably the lowest they've ever been, if not very close to it. And so a lot of people are refinancing for lowering that interest rate, and typically anyone over 4% on a 30-year. I just closed a loan last week at 2.875 on a 30-year fix with no origination fees. So it's very low. So we've been busy. Fortunately, the mortgage business technology is very good. So I've been working from home for a couple of years. So it really hasn't impacted my business very much at all.
So you are the manager of David Blatt Reverse Mortgages, and that brings up my primary question, because I understand what a mortgage is, but what is a reverse mortgage? How does that work?
A reverse mortgage is really just a loan. It's really no difference at all than a forward mortgage, except that you have options to pay it back. And typically, most people don't make any payments on a reverse. And the mortgage itself is not due until the homeowner, if their husband and wife leave the house or sell it. And that's when the mortgage is paid off.
So are there certain benefits in the times we're in now? Someone has a regular mortgage, a forward mortgage, as you had said, and they're looking to refinance, they're looking to change how they're paying for their home. Can they switch now or transition now to a reverse mortgage if they're looking to save the money for what they need right now for the basic necessities, and not necessarily betting is not the best word, but planning on in the future as they get back to work, as the market does improve and going forward, that they're able to collect the funds that they need to then, when they do go to sell the home, be able to pay that off?
Well, typically most of the reverse mortgages that I do or the company does is paying off someone's first mortgage. But we need 50%, close to 50% equity in their house to do that. So everyone doesn't qualify. But that is one of the main reasons why people do get a reverse mortgage, is to stop their mortgage payment and increase their monthly income, which, especially if they're retired, gives them more financial cash flow every month and protection, so they can take that money, like you said, and either enjoy it, give it to family, or save it.
What is the biggest financial advice that you're offering to people during this uncertain times, even perhaps to families that did not lose their jobs?
Well, I mean, I'm in the mortgage business. I don't give financial advice, so I can give them advice on which is the best mortgage for them. You know, either a reverse or a forward mortgage or an adjustable or a fixed 30-year or 15. But the only advice that I give people is, number one, if I can lower their interest rates, like I said, and they can save a couple $1,000s a year, or if they have a lot of credit cards. It makes sense because, as everyone knows, credit card companies could be charging between 12 and 20% interest rate. So if you can get a 3% mortgage, consolidate those credit cards, that automatically increases the cash flow for the homeowner. And it also is tax deductible, where the credit cards today are not tax deductible, that interest.
David Blatt with us. He is the manager of David Blatt Reverse Mortgages and K Financial Group. So for those that are refinancing right now or looking to refinance, how can that benefit them right now? Is there any additional costs to that would maybe make them averse to this? Or are they able to go into this process, refinance their mortgage, and in doing so, put more dollars in their pocket right now that will help them with other basic necessities as people continue to struggle financially during the coronavirus pandemic?
Yes, I mean, typically we never take a fee until we approve a client. First, we decide, talk to them, which is the best program for them that meet their needs. I typically meet with all my clients in person if possible. Now, obviously, with the virus, sometimes it's difficult, but we can Zoom to them or do FaceTime. The closing cost on most loans are around $2,500. No origination fee. The only out-of-pocket cost, if there is, would be the appraisal after we approve them, and that will range between $400 and $500. And the banks actually order the appraisal. With the last recession, the mortgage companies are really hands-off on appraisals. So that's really the only out-of-pocket cost. If they need to, if they want to escrow for taxes, property taxes and insurance, that is added on, of course, to the mortgage. But the clients, the borrowers, will get a refund from their present lender and their escrow. So it's really a wash there. And that's basically, it's pretty simple. The lenders, the banks we work with, we probably have about 50 banks, but we're closing loans right now in about 3 weeks, which is very good.
If someone is on the edge about looking into refinancing right now, what would you say to them?
Well, the first thing is we just look at their interest rates and see what their payment is. And if it takes really not very long, 15 minutes, I can qualify someone. The one question is a big question is credit scores today. Again, with the last Great Recession we had, the banks are very conservative. So credit scores today will basically set the interest rate more or less on the clients. So if someone has a below 700 or 620, but the best rates today are typically 720 and over.
David Blatt with us. He's the manager of David Blatt Reverse Mortgages and K Financial Group with us on the Oakland County Megacast. David, just another couple minutes with you before we have to let you go. Anything else that's really important for our audience to know, or anything else that you'd like to touch on today before we say goodbye?
Typically, the most important thing is someone can just give me a call. We can, they don't realize how easy it is to refinance. They could save thousands of dollars. I mean, someone saving $2,000 a year can end up saving $80,000 for a life of a mortgage. I mean, it really adds up. And on the reverse side, Most people don't realize that we also do purchases on the reverse side, which is a strong market. People can put half down, seniors, and they never have to make a mortgage payment again. And again, they'll be able to take those proceeds that they don't need to put down on that house and save it or put it into their financial plan. And again, it gives them more monthly cash flow. So a reverse has become a very strong mortgage today for seniors 62 and over, by the way, should really take a look at.
Well, David, thank you very much for being with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. Anytime.
We appreciate having you on. David Blatt, he is the manager of David Blatt Reverse Mortgages and K Financial Group, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the continued impact of the coronavirus pandemic on our small businesses. That and more coming up on the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations. Ronnie and I will return after this break.
Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonae Khaldun. I'm the Chief Medical Executive for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The people who are at highest risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19 are the elderly and those with chronic medical conditions. That includes people with heart disease, diabetes, COPD, or those who have compromised immune systems. People who are in those categories should right now be staying at home as much as possible and not going out if it is not essential. If you fit into one of those categories, those are the things you should do. And if you have a family member who fits into one of those categories, you should be checking in on them and making sure they are following those guidelines. There's something everyone can do to protect the community from COVID-19.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, we're on Birmingham Area Municipal Access, both of our TV stations on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. You can watch us online in high definition on civiccentertv.com. Also, we are on 88.1 WBFH, The Biff out of Bloomfield Hills, and today our Facebook partner is the Keego Harbor Police Department. We thank the city of Keego Harbor and their police department, including Chief John Fitzgerald, for joining us today on their Facebook page via Facebook Live as we broadcast the show Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon on our family of TV and radio stations, bringing you the latest news and information from around the Oakland County area as this coronavirus pandemic continues onward, and we continue to see more and more challenges be put in place for a lot of different industries, and especially for our small businesses in the state of Michigan. Joining us now to talk about those continued challenges and how they're being tackled from the financial angle and from the institution of these executive orders angle. We are joined once again by the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan, or SBAM, Rob Fowler, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Rob, thank you for coming back again.
Hey, thanks, Tyler. Appreciate the invitation.
We appreciate having you on. How are you? How's your team been doing?
Team is good. We're, like a lot of our businesses, we are 100% remote. That's 27 employees, all working from home. But our obsession these days is helping small businesses navigate this crisis. We are all well, and we are all at work doing exactly that.
you've been doing this for, I mean, you're helping small businesses in regular times navigate the challenges that come with being a small business, just day to day in general. But during the coronavirus pandemic, your team's been really hard at work from the onset, no matter what the issue was, whether it was initially trying to get those PPP loans, or as time's gone on, trying to get people back to work as they're either eligible to come off of unemployment and the businesses are able in a financial state to have employees come back. There's so much work that's been put in from your organization to help these small businesses. How are you guys holding up, keeping that going? Is there still momentum there? Are you facing new challenges now that are different than before? And how is SBAM tackling those challenges?
Yeah, it's actually a really good point. You know, part of what we do every day before the coronavirus is advocacy on behalf of small business. So, you know, making certain that policymakers, government officials understand the impact of their rules and their laws on small business. And that's been sort of, you know, on steroids during this whole period of time in the sense that laws and policies and executive orders have been coming fast and furious, and they have huge impact on small businesses. And it's been really difficult for small businesses to stay informed. So part of what we did is instituted initially a daily briefing, and now a twice-a-week briefing for small businesses. We do it through our website and through Zoom, and really it's a matter of just trying to keep up to date on the things that are happening, executive orders, you know, kind of in particular lately, and making sure that we have clarity around the small businesses, the impact on them and their responsibilities under these executive orders.
Rob Fowler with us. He's the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan. And you talk about clarity from a governmental standpoint. There's been so much that's been put in place over the course of the pandemic that has directly impacted these small businesses, whether it be the stay-at-home order, which required a lot of small businesses, particularly in retail and restaurants and so on, to be either drive-through, curbside service, whether it be now the mask order that's in place, and further complications of that and escalations of that as time has gone on. How do you navigate that? And what are your conversations with government officials been, especially on the mask order as it's been in place? Because there has been some confusion with that in terms of what these small businesses are responsible, especially the retailers, are responsible for doing and enforcing, and at what point that gray area goes away where they're doing everything that they can, but maybe they're not liable anymore.
Well, and Tyler, you're exactly right. We've actually entered into a new phase. I have been a small business advocate for 35 years. I could not literally have imagined a day would come where the government said you must close your business. I mean, that's just almost unthinkable, and we've now lived through that. And now the government is saying, in Michigan in particular, first, that every person must wear a mask and that a business must enforce it. So if someone is coming into my place of business, my responsibility is to, according to the executive order, not let them come in unless they're wearing a face mask, and not provide them service if they come in without a face mask. Now, there are some exemptions or exceptions to that. And we've spent a lot of time trying to help the employer understand the limit, the extent of their responsibility here. So, for example, I mean, the executive order literally says you cannot allow them to come in. There were two mask executive orders. The first one, for anybody who's keeping score, is 2020-147. And then less than a week later, 153 came along that replaced 147, mostly the same things, but the one clarification was some businesses had been given legal advice or advice from from their association or others that said, if somebody comes into your business without a mask, you can assume that they meet one of the exceptions, and particularly the medically unable to tolerate a face covering. That's a broad exception. And the new executive order says to a business, you cannot assume that. You must ask someone to wear a mask. And if they tell you that they have an exception, that they are medically unable to tolerate then you can let them come in, you can provide them service. And it actually puts small businesses in a tough spot. These are generally frontline staff, employees who have no training in de-escalation, and you couple that with people who are just ticked off about having to wear a mask, and it really creates a bad situation for a lot of businesses. And the tricky spot is you must ask them to wear a mask. If they tell you that I have an exception or an exemption, you can accept that. You don't have to understand it anymore. And in fact, you can't ask them what their medical condition is, because then you risk running afoul of some other laws, like the Americans with Disabilities Act, HIPAA, privacy laws, and those sort of things. So you really can't pry into what is your medical condition. You have to ask, and then you accept when someone tells you, I have a medical condition that makes it so that I cannot tolerate a face covering. So all that to say, we've been just trying to clarify what the business's responsibility is. They have no responsibility to, physically remove someone or demand that someone leave their premises if they're not wearing a face covering and they believe they have an exception.
So, Rob, if I can ask you, because these are confusing times, are you recommending that they keep a log or maybe a description of the individual who came in and they asked them if they had one and they said, I have an exemption? Because other words, then it's kind of just them saying, oh, no, they told me they had an exemption. Or even is signage enough these days, or no?
Well, the responsibility of the employer is to put up a sign, to ask at the door, and to not provide service if someone doesn't claim to meet one of the exceptions. So for example, under 5 is one of those. A child under 5 is exempt from wearing a face covering, but you don't have to ask their age. If they say he or she is under 5, you can accept that. So, Ronnie, the question actually gets a little more complicated in certain businesses, personal services, and this would be haircuts and salons and some of those sort of things. You are actually expected to keep a log of your clients. That is essentially for contact tracing purposes if something were to happen. But if you run a retail store or a restaurant or a grocery store, you're not expected to keep a log, and not even a log of those who claim a medical exemption. So fortunately, it is not in a small business's instinct, it's not in their DNA to say, you can't come into my business and spend your money here. They would want to do anything they can to keep that from happening. And they certainly don't want to tick off a good customer who may never come back and may talk badly about them to other people. That's not the spot any small business owner wants to be in. So this sort of enforcement of the state policy, the state law, is a really awkward spot for a lot of small businesses. We're advocating to get out of that role as quickly as we possibly can. We support mask wearing, we support social distancing, and most small businesses have employed those things inside their business voluntarily and will continue to do so. But it really puts small businesses in a tough spot. We're afraid that we're going to see a lot of lawsuits and some liability, and there is an effort both in the state legislature and in the Congress to provide some protections to employers from liability if they follow the rules.
Rob Fowler with us. He's the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan, otherwise known as SBAM. So as you're navigating that, because you have to follow these rules, these businesses can lose their license if they are found to not be following these rules, and so it's absolutely critical for their future to be following them. It's necessary that we wear masks to protect ourselves and protect the public, and it's good for business because if your customers are getting sick, they're not coming back in. But at the same time, you have that balance of providing for the customers and not alienating the customers while enforcing these rules that keep your business operating legally. So what suggestions in that case is your organization giving these small businesses to navigate that, maintaining their public relations and their customer relations while also maintaining legality in this very gray area?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tyler. And I think one of the things we've been trying to encourage businesses is to find some way to accommodate a customer. Be clever, be creative. I mean, again, it's not any business's instinct to turn away a customer who's trying to come to their business. So if someone simply refuses to wear a mask, they just refuse. They declare that they are a patriot and a freedom lover, and they're not going to be pushed around by the government. And we fully get that instinct. Can you figure out another way to serve them? Can you do the shopping for them? Can you do curbside? Can you do delivery? We're encouraging businesses to first and foremost try to serve your customer within the law, and to try to work around these situations. This is just about accommodation. If somebody doesn't feel comfortable coming into your business because somebody is in your business who's not wearing a face mask, can you accommodate that? Accommodate that. That's really our advice: is be creative, be clever, help serve your customers, understand the law and the rules here. Make sure you have the signage. Make sure you keep social distancing and do the face coverings. But when that is a problem for a customer, do whatever you can to work around it.
Rob, if we could for a second shift away from the customers that they're serving over to employees. Are they having a hard time getting employees? What about employees returning? And how are these businesses, and what advice are you giving to them when it comes to the employees if they're not comfortable coming back, and should they be requiring that they get tested?
Well, and thank you for raising it, because that's a whole different set of issues. And in some ways, we've been at this a little bit longer. That is to say, this new executive order put employers in the position of having to make certain that their customers are following these rules. But for some time, they've had to make certain that their employees are. And again, it's for good reason. A business should want to take care of its employees, make sure they're safe and well. And the rules are pretty clear about what you have to do there. You have to do medical screening. You have to provide PPE. You have to give them social distance within the workplace. You have to make certain you clean surfaces and do those sort of things. So an employer has good reason to make certain that people are safe. But and then their customers will acknowledge that the employees there are doing the right things, and then the customers will feel safe. So lots of employers are having trouble with their employees actually keeping the mask up, doing those sort of things. Customers see that, and then they're uncomfortable. So it really does behoove a business to make certain that all their employees are following the rules. One of the things we are now experiencing is the issue that we saw coming. A lot of people saw coming, and that is people who are on unemployment and have the additional unemployment provided by the federal government of $600 a week on top of Michigan's unemployment are making more money on unemployment than they would be coming back to work in some cases. And that has made it very, very difficult for small businesses to get their employees to come back. Now that's ending next week. So unless the Congress extends that unemployment benefit at $600, I think it will be much easier to get people to come back to work. And I get it. I fully understand people will do what's in their best interest. This is a public policy. It's a decision of the Congress. And, whenever it is more lucrative to not work than to work, people will rightly choose that option. We get it. So we can't make it more lucrative to not be working at the moment. So lots of employers, small businesses, are having trouble getting people to come back so that they can serve their customers and ramp back up as the customers feel comfortable enough coming back.
Rob Fowler with us. He's the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Rob, a few weeks back, we were in a position where gyms and fitness centers were preparing to reopen. Many of those are small businesses or small business owned franchisees and had the rug kind of pulled out from under them when the courts ruled in favor of Governor Whitmer's previous rulings that the gyms were not going to be permitted to open due to safety reasons. Many have continued to pivot to virtual classes or to outdoor fitness classes with social distancing measures in place. We spoke earlier on this week with a local small fitness business about what they're doing, and it's some impressive stuff. But these gyms are still really struggling in some capacity when they don't have people coming back in the gyms. People maybe are moving to cancel their memberships, which could affect them later down the line. How are our small business owned gyms in the state of Michigan faring at this point in time, as we're several weeks past the point where they were not allowed to reopen?
Well, I think my sympathies go to the companies, the businesses right now who still haven't been allowed to reopen it. So it's theaters, it's gyms and fitness facilities and spas who haven't been allowed to reopen. So imagine, again, the government tells you that you must close your business for going on 5 months. And that means you have no income unless you've been able to pivot into some, but you're not making the kind of revenue that you made before this. You didn't prepare for it because nobody really saw this coming. You probably have blown through any sort of reserve savings, whatever that you had. And you probably have applied for the PPP and other assistance, but you are running out of air. And I believe if this continues to go on, we will lose entire industries that will have a heck of a time coming back. And I think small gyms and fitness facilities, small theaters, I really worry for those kinds of companies. I think we haven't begun to see the economic damage of this whole thing in retail restaurants. A lot of them will not survive this. They just simply won't. And I don't think we've fully comprehended the economic damage. I think the longer offices don't go back, are all remote, the more downtowns all across our state who don't have those office workers, then the restaurants and bars and coffee shops and retail are hurting. And this is it's a fundamental sort of reshaping of our economy that's happening right before our eyes. And again, I don't know that we have yet appreciated the damage that has been done. So my heart goes out to gym owners and others who continue to be shut down by the order of the government and probably have exhausted the government's help and still are in trouble.
So what more can be done at this point then to move that needle forward? There's got to be a way that these businesses can reopen in some capacity, even if it's in partial capacity, do so safely, because the reasons that they're closed are mostly scientific and are mostly for public safety reasons. But at the same time, these are people's lives that are impacted by this financially, and many people, employees, employers alike, are going to be struggling continuously after this pandemic because of this, as it's expected to go on through the rest of the year. But there's got to be some middle ground there. Is there any hope that can be found, or any action that's currently in place to move that needle forward?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, the Congress is considering a sort of a second round of employer assistance, and we're working very closely with our congressional delegation on that. Later today, we'll have Congressman Upton on our briefing to talk about what's going on there. But we've actually called on local governments. The reality is the restriction is on inside your building, how many people you can have, what kind of capacity, et cetera. But those same restrictions are not true outside your building. If you can have a large patio, get your customers outside, the restrictions are lessened as long as you can keep people apart from each other. So we've really called on local governments to make your government public space available to your businesses. We know of communities who close down streets to allow restaurants to come out into the street. I would say the same thing about any park, any public space. to make outdoor public space, to make it available to gyms, to theaters, to anybody else who is we've got to rethink this relationship between public space and private space, at least in this interim, so that I just simply would encourage local governments to be thinking about how they can make outdoor space available to their businesses so their businesses survive.
Rob, thank you very much for being with us today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
We appreciate it. Rob Fowler, the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And Ronnie, these businesses, especially the small businesses and industries that are still shut down, facing so many challenges and so many difficulties right now as they continue to navigate the struggles of the pandemic, while at the same time we're balancing as a society, especially on the government level, having to face that fact that these businesses are struggling. Their employees' lives are heavily impacted by this, while at the same time it's our responsibility to maintain the public health and contain this virus as best as possible.
I think in the beginning we saw it go on for 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, and we had that huge campaign of let's support these businesses, let's do carry out. And even my niece works in a restaurant and she said the tips are very high right now because people are trying to support them. But as this goes on, that is going away because we're going back to life, but we're forgetting there are no movie theaters. Right. So we're just on Netflix now, and we become accustomed to that, and with the gyms and virtual and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, they're still having to pay those bills, and so we need to find a way as a society and to continue to support them, and maybe bring those campaigns back. Remember, it was like thank the heroes, thank the frontline workers, and we've done that. But all of that is starting to go away as this wears on our conscience in our day-to-day lives, and we become more accustomed to it. We're forgetting about the overall impact in some of these other industries that may not come back.
Our decisions definitely have consequences in every aspect of life, whether it's during the pandemic or not, and one thing leads to another, and there's a snowball effect in all these different areas, especially on the business side, and in all other areas that are related to the coronavirus pandemic. Even just today we saw a story on our website, and that's on our website on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus about testing. People before knew that, okay, if we're going to get tested, we got to make sure that we're feeling a certain kind of way under the weather. We're showing some symptoms. It's only for certain people. You got to get doctor's approval. Now it's more open, and people are getting those tests more often, and we're seeing those delays come into play now with test results coming back from the labs. We're going to talk now with Dr. Jamie Taweel with us again on the Oakland County Megacast about that and other related issues. Dr. Taweel, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me as always. How are we doing?
Doing all right. How are you doing? How's your team at the practice?
Keeping busy. We're really keeping busy.
So as I mentioned in the introduction to your interview, we saw a story today about that reported that coronavirus COVID-19 lab facilities are experiencing delays as more people are getting tested and more of these samples are coming into them, and that may make results for more expedient tests that are even within a day, and even those that are a little bit longer for results that are within a week, a little more delay, which can cause some issues for those that need immediacy in knowing if they are COVID-19 positive or COVID-19 negative, because in many cases time is of the essence in treating this virus. How critical is it that we continue to get people that need the tests now or as soon as possible to get those results back, to keep them in the front of the line getting the results?
Very critical. I believe, my opinion is that anyone that needs to get testing done should hopefully get the results as soon as possible, because you have to wait until you are able to get a negative test before you're able to go and interact with other people. There's definitely going to be priority. There are going to be people that are ill in the hospital that are going to need to get their results first. There are people that are required to have surgeries that we need to have results on. People that are entering extended care facilities or subacute rehabilitation, nursing homes, so to speak, to make sure that they're not really putting at-risk populations higher up, as well as essential workers, essential healthcare professionals, people that need to interact with other people for a living to try and help them out. you're going to want to get those results as soon as possible. So, any delay in results are always going to be a bit of an issue. It's going to grind things to a halt and also potentially put people at risk.
We've talked multiple times about the COVID-19 test versus the antibody test, which one's more effective, which one's more accurate. But and as we're experiencing these delays with the COVID-19 tests coming back, and it's causing these delays with such an influx at these labs, are there certain tests that should be for people that are in more serious situations, and then those that are just out of curiosity getting a test, should they maybe either delay getting a COVID-19 test or just get the antibody test, which maybe isn't as accurate but can give them a similar look into their story?
So the antibody test is a great test to show if there's been exposure. It does have a little bit more of a higher accuracy rate, but it's not going to tell us anything rather immediate. And there's still some concern whether or not, having positive antibodies is going to be something that's going to keep, essentially make you immune. So the validity of the antibody test certainly has its benefits. It can also show exposures. It can kind of be used to help with contact tracing where people picked up exposures, et cetera. The nasopharyngeal swabs and things to that effect are going to be a little bit more important because you want to know whether or not you're currently infected. So I think that it's definitely important. And then I think the best way to do this is to, again, go by symptoms. Have you been exposed, or do you have symptoms of COVID-19? And if that's the case, then you should get put to the front of the line versus the typical, hey, I'm just wondering if I have it. I'm alive and doing well, but I don't, I'm just curious. That might grind things a little bit more to a halt, if that makes any sense.
So a federal judge ruled this week that all the students at the Detroit Public School District in their summer school program had to be tested for COVID-19 prior to continuing the program. I think it was like 650 students. Yes. Do you think all students and teachers and staff should be tested before being allowed back into a classroom?
Personally, I think everyone should be tested, period. But, obviously we're limited to resources. We're limited by how much we're able to test. I think it can be, again, as a physician, my personal opinion is I do think people should be tested before you're going to put them in a room or a potentially dangerous situation. I think it's necessary. If you have anyone that's going into, for example, I often use outpatient surgical services as the critical example, but anyone that's getting an outpatient or a non-emergent surgery or an elective surgery is going to get tested, because if you're positive, you can put everyone at risk. And that ends up grinding everything to a halt. So I do believe that everyone should get tested because it's going to be important. Again, do we have the resources to do that? That remains a different story, and that's a little bit outside of kind of my thought process, so to speak.
So on that note then, Dr. Jamie Taweel, internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates, with us on the Megacast. If that's the case, and as we're returning kids to school, of course, they're going to be required. There's going to be mask requirements in these schools for the students and for the faculty. There's some lighter restrictions or regulations on mask wearing for some of the younger students. So would you say in that case that the younger students are less necessarily in need of testing or in need of mask wearing than the older students who are more independent, more out and about in that case? Or does it really ultimately still come back to a case-by-case basis? How are they interacting in regular life?
I think it's more case-by-case. If I understand your question correctly, is it just because the younger people are not required to wear a mask, are they less at risk for having and transmitting? Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, that's essentially.
I think also there's limitations to it. Younger, children that are they're gonna touch their face, they're gonna pull the mask, they're not gonna be as compliant. That might be a little bit more of a reason for them to not require the mask. If there's data that suggests that they are less likely, that's specific. I certainly haven't seen it. It does not mean it doesn't exist. But I do think that they should also still be tested because, again, infants do have a greater propensity to spread these things, specifically because they're being handled by adults. They're being passed around by adults. They're interacting more. They are less likely to practice social distancing. They can't technically. They are less likely to abstain from touching their face. They cough. They sneeze. They are germ factories, for lack of a better word.
Oh yeah.
But so if you can't get them to commit to a mask, I think the testing probably wouldn't be a bad idea, just to ensure that they're not at least putting someone who has, for lack of a better word, an unknown disregard for the norms that you would try to adopt in order to prevent spread. I think you should try and do the best that you can, and testing, in my opinion, I think is a better idea.
Dr. Taweel, anything else that's important for us to know today, or anything else you'd like to touch on before we let you go?
No, same as always. Keep safe. You guys are doing a great job. I love the fact that you're spreading the word, and keep wearing the mask, keep practicing social distancing as best as you can. And if there's any concerns, obviously call your doctor. Do not hesitate to go to the emergency room if you feel you have a medical emergency. They are doing a great job at trying to separate things as best as possible. So,
well, we appreciate having you on with us again today, Dr. Taweel.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. Dr. Jamie Taweel with us on the Oakland County Megacast. He is an internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates. And good to get some clarity on that, because I think that a lot of people, myself included, I know both of us definitely were curious coming into today's program with the headlines about who should get tested, what kind of test you should be getting, and when. And there's still that encouragement out there for everybody to get tested if they can. But you also, I think, you still have to weigh the worthiness of you getting tested in that specific moment before you're making that decision, especially keeping in mind these delays where certain people are going to need those tests on a higher priority than you. And if these delays are being experienced, if I'm feeling healthy, maybe I don't need a test right at this moment. I can wait a week or two.
I always like having Dr. Taweel on, even though we have him on like once a week or once every 2 weeks. Every time we talk to him, I learn something new, but it's great to have the perspective of someone from inside the healthcare system that can actually talk about these things directly. So I feel like I'm talking to my regular doctor when I have him. I have not been tested. You go back and forth because Oakland County, if you live in Oakland County, they're encouraging people to get tested, and they have free testing and things of that nature. But I always think back to the very beginning when you couldn't get a test. I had a cousin who did test positive. She was one of the first ones. Her daughter could not get a test, even though she was presumed to have had the virus because she lived with her mom, but testing was so limited. And, you know, it's just like your bank account. It's like, don't you want to stockpile because you know things are going to get worse again? And we're seeing what's going on in the southern states. So I feel like there is a need out there, and we're seeing there are issues again with PPE for the healthcare workers in the Sun Belt region. So I always feel, for me, if I'm not having symptoms, I haven't been sick, I'm really not around a lot of people, you know, so I feel like I should save those tests for other people that could need them or do, you know, to help spread it. Now, if I were to get a call to say, hey, you could have been in contact with someone, then yes, I would go get it. But I feel like I should help preserve them for the people that do need them.
And that, again, we're not in any way discouraging people from getting tested. If you feel the need to get tested, there are resources available. We have those on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Click on the Oakland County link, and there's plenty of local information about where you can get tested and how you can get in contact with a nurse on call at Oakland County to set up those tests. But in the meantime, if you're feeling well and you're just taking caution and wanting to get a test, that's also very understandable. But maybe at that point, what you do is you just take more seriously wearing your mask. Even if you're outdoors and you're around just a few other people, in an abundance of caution, wear your mask. Make sure you're maintaining 6-foot distance. Wash your hands regularly, and do all the things that we've been doing since March, since the beginning of this pandemic in Oakland County, in the state of Michigan, and throughout the U.S., so that you're preserving safety and you're taking proper precautions and you're taking this virus seriously, but maybe not doing something that's not entirely necessary in this very moment that could cause delays for other people who need those resources.
I have seen where to actually go on maybe a camping trip or events with organizations, in order to participate, people do have to get a test and come back negative. And some people who thought that they were perfectly fine ended up testing positive, and they didn't even know it. So there are two sides to all of this, and I think from the very beginning there's been so much confusion because it is changing every day. They're learning more information, they're learning new things. one of the things we're seeing is there's a lot of positivity around the possibility of these vaccines. Let's hope that they come up with one and it gets in distribution by the end of the year, the end of the first of 2021, so we can have a good new year, Tyler.
Yeah, we were really thinking, it's funny to think about now that on December 31st, 2019, on January 1st, 2020, we're looking at this, all right, new decade. 2019 was a wild year. We're going into this strong, and we're going to have a great year. And now we're just like, all right, let's just push that on to 2021. That is going to do it for today's edition of the Oakland County Megacast. You can watch us each and every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, here on our family of TV and radio stations. Ronnie and I will return tomorrow for our final show of the week, and we appreciate you tuning in to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations.